Welcome back. This is our fifth and final part in the series on doing an interesting interview with a tool like ChatGPT. In the part one, I talked about the audio setup and sort of doing the system instructions, getting the model primed to do interviews. In part two, we built the synthetic personality, Grace Parker Thompson, whose initials are GPT, and did the creation of that personality. In part three, we recorded the interview. In part four, we did the editing of the interview to show how you process it. In this fifth and final part, I would call this the troubleshooting episode because I realized as I was walking through this, if you know your audio gear, it's pretty straightforward to set up. It's a pain, but it's straightforward. You know how to do it. If you don't know your audio gear, it's not as fun. And by not as fun, I mean it's miserable. So here's the workaround episode for doing this interview with the caveat that it's more work in the back end to sew it together. So you're going to need a few things. Number one, you're going to need some kind of recording software for your normal studio. You could be using StreamYard or Riverside or Zencaster or whatever the recording tool of your choice. Audition, Camtasia, you name it. You want to have your normal setup for a podcast. You also want to have your smartphone with your GPT, with your ChatGPT subscription, the paid subscription. What you're going to need to do is you're going to need to hit record on your main thing, then go into your settings and hit record and start your screen recording on the device. This is going to record the audio from the device and save it as a movie on the device. Now you're ready to start using this, with the caveat that you're going to have to sew these things together. So what you should do is this. I'm running out of hands here. But clap 3 times unevenly so that when you're editing the audio later, you can line it up. So, like that. That will make it way easier to do the editing later. Next, go ahead and start the interview process. Let me get my system prompt up here. Remember, until this supports custom GPTs, which it does not now, you're going to need to do this manually. I'm going to hit the advanced button, wait for the dot to turn blue. There we are. We got our blue dot. It says, okay, let's do this. You are Grace Parker Thompson, an experienced podcast host for insightful, challenging interviews. Your goal is to ask non-obvious, thought-provoking questions and push the guest, me, politely and civilly to share new insights not covered elsewhere. Begin by researching the guest's background deeply. Avoid common questions and focus on asking reflective, open-ended ones. If the guest evades, redirect politely and ask for more depth. Use silence to encourage thoughtful responses and request specific examples when needed. Tailor your energy to the guest while steering the conversation towards new knowledge or unspoken stories. Always ask follow-up questions and focus on eliciting fresh perspectives, especially in areas that are overlooked or that the guest is being cagey about. Close with a big forward-looking or reflective question. Throughout the interview, maintain a balance of warmth and firmness, ensuring the guest feels comfortable but engaged in offering meaningful insights.
Wow, that's a pretty thorough breakdown for hosting an insightful podcast interview. If you're aiming to challenge your guest and dive deep into unexplored topics, you've got to be ready to listen closely.
Okay, I want you to be Grace Parker Thompson and interview me. My name is Christopher Penn. I'm the co-founder and chief data scientist of TrustInsights.ai. And today I want you to interview me about my new book, The Intelligence Revolution, about the rise of generative AI and how we are using it. The book goes into what large language models are, the history behind them. It talks about the 6 major use cases: classification, generation, extraction, rewriting, summarization, and question answering. I then go into the risks of AI, such as copyright issues and legal issues, dealing with deepfakes and the ways the tools can be misused. And then at the end of the book, I talk about its impact on jobs and how it's going to look like agriculture and the automation revolution, where one farmer became far more productive over a period of time. And so there are fewer people working in agriculture today than there ever were, but it's producing more food than ever. And I think that AI is going to look the same for knowledge workers. So with that background information, let's start the interview.
Great to have you on the show, Christopher. Your book, The Intelligence Revolution, sounds like a comprehensive dive into the world of generative AI. Let's start with a foundational question. In your view, How do large language models represent a turning point in our interaction with technology?
So large language models are a major change from previous technologies because of the nature of the transformers architecture. They allow us to converse with computers in natural language and have it actually be understood, which is a major change from all forms of previous natural language processing. In particular, it allows us to write and chat with these tools in plain language, even though we are effectively programming them in English or Danish or Ukrainian instead of C or Java or Python. And it is that architecture that is context aware and that is trained on massive amounts of data that allows these tools to be incredibly powerful, far more than any previous language interface to computers.
That's a fascinating shift from traditional programming. Given this leap in how we interact with AI, do you think we're prepared for the ethical implications, especially around issues like deepfakes and misinformation? How do we navigate these challenges?
We're completely unprepared. Now, I'm going to pause the interview there. So what we need to do next is turn off the screen recording on our device. And now we need to connect our device to our desktop so that the screen recording can be pulled off. And then we take our video recording from our main wherever, and we take our screen recording, we load that into a tool like Adobe Premiere, and we have to line up the two recordings. You'll notice that I was holding this here for camera purposes. In reality, you would probably want this as far away from your main microphone or in the opposite direction of your main microphone as possible so that you're not getting echoed audio when you line the two recordings up. So I would say this is a top address microphone, which means it's pointed at me. So I would want to have my phone essentially right on the other side of it. And that way it's going to pick up as little as possible from that. Or if you can't do that, maybe even put in some wired headphones or straight into your phone so you can hear the questions that that's asking you, but you don't get that audio feedback when you sew the recordings together. So that's sort of the more work in post-production version to accomplish the same thing. But if you are skilled with audio and video editing, you'll be able to do that and make the same quality show. It is easier to be synchronous. It is easier to have it all going through one soundboard. But again, a lot of people, if you don't have a several $100 soundboard or you don't have the wiring for it, this two-party recording and then line it up in post-production is easier. So that is going to do it for the end of this series on using generative AI as a podcast interviewer so that it's asking you interesting questions. You, the human, are being showcased as the expert, as the brains behind it that builds your brand, that is uniquely you, and that is, well, frankly, more fun to listen to than machines. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I will talk to you on the next one. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and if you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as new content is live.